Rebbe is saying that the women should not be passive participants, just listening to, so to speak, what the Hasidic elders are teaching, but instead they should actually be very much involved in strengthening all of the traditions, and they should be in the forefront of strengthening Yiddishkeit. Of course, this is what we take today for granted. In the 1940s was quite a strong statement and a different way to look at the Hasidic family. Okay, we're in the middle of chapter 7, page Sadik Zayin. The Rebbe is giving us the two ways to have a true and straight way to the path of tshuva. The first was to awaken compassion on the soul, and the second was to crush the forces of evil. And you crush them by taking out their bluff, calling their bluff, by taking away their arrogance. And we spoke about this yesterday, so I won't repeat it, but we spoke about the concept that when people essentially are down on their luck and they need other people, it's very hard to be arrogant. So the idea of the other side is a power and energy which overtly, superficially, externally says, you don't need God, we don't need God. Yeah, we're not against him, but we just don't need him. We have our own strength. We have our own vitality. And to destroy this force, you basically have to show not only how worthless they are, but to actually be disgusted with this whole attitude. And when they realize that they have nothing on their own, then there's an opening for Kedusha. So we'll repeat some of the words that we learned. We're on page Sadik Zayin, the fourth line from the top. So the second method is Levatesh, to crush ulachni haklip achra, and to subdue the shell. And the other side, asher kolcha, you say the whole life force of the other side. Yudak bechinas kasus. It's all only there's an insensitivity, a dullness, v'hagba, and almost an artificial elevation. And Hashem's says this in regard to destroying Edom, the forces of evil, and he says, even if you lift yourself to fly as an eagle, I will throw you down from that place. But when we talk about bitush, the idea of crushing and subduing, it has to be to the ground, literally. This is the way to destroy it. They say that Reb Simcha Bunim of Shischa, one of the great Hasidic leaders, before he was given the responsibility to be the great Hasidic leader, he was one of the foremost students. So after his Rebbe had passed on, I'm not sure if the exact sequence, but after his Rebbe passed on, they asked him to become the leader because he was one of the greatest, or perhaps the greatest of the students. So he refused. And one of the reasons that he gave is because it is very easy once you become in a leadership position and people show you the honor and respect necessary to keep that leadership position, it's possible to fall into a sense of arrogance. A while later, when he was being badgered and requested and begged by the Hasidim that only he could actually lead them and teach them and inspire them, he agreed. Before he actually began the formal induction of him, he said, the main reasons was that I did not want to fall or be connected to the sin of arrogance. However, there was in this village, someone taught me that I should not be concerned. And I'll tell you what happened. The village had a bathhouse. Well, basically, not everyone had running water and certainly hot water. So there was a place like once a week or maybe twice a week, whatever it is, there was a bathhouse, a hot water, etc. Now, this is a village or a town. The places are not paved. So there's a lot of mud. Well, obviously, if you're going to bathe, you don't want to bring in the mud. So one of the antechambers, there was like a long hallway, there were benches, people sat down, and they would take off their muddy boots. After they took off their muddy boots, they would go further into the home, into the house, where they would disrobe and eventually go into the bath. When you're wearing these long, high boots, it's filled with mud, it's an effort to put it on. Usually they would put it on in the morning and take it off only at night. This was like sometime during the day. So there was one fellow who actually was a boot. His job was to assist people taking off their boots. So for the equivalent of today, you would call a nickel or pennies, people would give him the money, and he would take the boot off. And for a couple of cents, literally, a person felt a little bit, a little bit higher. He didn't have to take off his own boots. Someone did it for him. So Rabbi Simcha Bunim goes to this place, and he was perfectly satisfied taking off his own boots, but he realized that the fellow that was taking off the boots needed the money. I mean, because it's not a very dignified type of a job. So he figured, why not allow him to do it? So this fellow, he sits down, and this boot remover starts pulling the boot off his foot. He was not very gentle. So the Rebbe, or the would-be Rebbe, said to him, perhaps if you move a little bit to the left or whatever it is, or you put your left hand underneath this and this place, it will be a little bit more gentle. So you won't have to take off my foot with the boot. And the guy looks at Rebbe Bunim indignantly, and he says, are you telling me how to take off boots? I'm the best remover of boots in this whole village. When Rabbi Simcha saw that you could be a big shot, even if your profession is taking off muddy boots, and even in that you could be arrogant or proud or whatever. On one hand, it's actually a gift. Hashem has given us the gift that no matter what we accomplish, if this is what we do as a profession, that we can feel proud of it. But on the other hand, he also saw something else. Here, he was concerned that if he would be in a leadership position, he might become arrogant. But if he's gonna, sweep the streets, he'll be a humble Jew serving God sincerely. But now he saw you could be a street sweeper, a boot remover, and still be a big shot. Well, if that's the case, he has the talents to inspire and teach. So then he should do that. So the only way to get rid of Klippa and Sitra Achra is not to humble yourself a little bit, to bring it down from the level of an eagle and have it to the level of a sparrow. No, it has to be brought, that's what he says, ad offer mamish, literally to the offer, literally to the ground, and the zohu misasa. And this is misasa. This is actually the death of it. I think in some of the books where they describe addiction, especially when they talk about the idea of alcohol, they say sometimes you have to let the person hit rock bottom. Because if you intercede or try to rescue when he is not yet at rock bottom, then he'll never understand the necessity and how crucial it is for him to change his behavior. So sometimes if he has a little bit of dignity left, and you say, okay, you see, he might later on say to himself, it wasn't so bad. But when he hits rock bottom, they can't fall any further. There's only one way, and that's the way up of recovery, or God forbid, just to give up and die. In a, I don't know if the word is similar, but in a sense, the same thing is with the arrogance of unholiness. Again, what is the arrogance of unholiness? The arrogance of unholiness could be seen from one perspective. I know, I feel. So yes, God knows better, but I have feelings and I have desires, and I want to, fulfill them. Or the arrogance is, no matter what I do, I'm still a great person. No matter how sinful I am, I'm still a good person. So you can meet a sinner, and when you ask him, do you think you're a good person? He could look you in the eye and sincerely say, yes. And you say, but you did A, B, and C. He might either deny it, or he might say, so what? There's that sense of ego, which is not healthy over here. So as long as he feels that he has an independence which is worthy, he'll never really do tshuva. He'll do parts of tshuva, but as we spoke 2 days ago, there's a correct way and a straight way. So in order to do the correct and straight way, we mentioned number one, awakening compassion. The second one is how it has to be a bitush. There has to be the type of a crushing which destroys the evil, and that obviously is going to be revealed through this will come through a broken heart, to be despised in your own eyes. And as the Zohar, the Holy Zohar says, on the verse, Zivchei Elekim Ruach Nishbara, the sacrifice of God to God is a broken heart, Lev Nishba V'nidka V'chuli. The word broken heart is used in different ways. In many places and in many conditions and situations, a broken heart is a description of a very unfortunate person. So very often a person that loses, I use the word loses in italics, someone who has a loved one that dies, whether it be any of the 7 relatives, father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, wife, husband, or it might be a good friend, and they have a broken heart. And that broken heart, at face value, is something that's not positive. We want to bring joy into this person's life. We want to give optimism. We want to provide a direction upwards, and a broken heart is like, I'll never feel again. I'll never be whole again. And that's very painful, not only for the person who's experiencing it, which of course is unique to him, but even those that admire and love him are pained because he has a broken heart. How do you fix a broken heart? I mean, you could go to a cardiologist, but he cannot fix a broken heart. Only Hashem can. But a broken heart, the way he's referring to, is a positive concept, because when a heart is complete, imagine for a moment it being frozen. So if you look at a frozen heart, it is complete. It has everything. The problem is that it's not pumping blood. It's in a freezer. What you have to do is really break the ice and get the heart to be malleable. I've told this story in the past. This is in the late 1960s. There was a Holocaust survivor who tried to relive his life in Israel, had children. One daughter was in America. In the 1960s, was not as common as it is today for the average person to make to fly to Israel. You know, it was a big trip and a very expensive trip. They did a lot of communicating through telephone, if you might remember that, a telephone. What happened was that 1966 or something like that, the father had a heart attack, and what was pretty serious. And they called her from the doctor, from the hospital, that your father has a heart attack. We're scheduling a surgery. Perhaps it'd be worthwhile for you to come and be with him, either for the rehabilitation, or God forbid, if the operation does not go well, for other reasons. And of course, she was very agitated about the whole thing and managed to go to Israel. She comes 2 days or 3 days after the the phone call. She knows, she was notified that the operation went well and now it's recovering. But she was really concerned about how her father, who was a Holocaust survivor, who lived through so much suffering, how he would deal with this latest medical trouble. She came to him. I don't know if he was in urgent care or maybe, recovery room, and she was really pleasantly surprised. Though he was weak physically and it was going to be a while until he recovers, his spirits were great. He was actually upbeat. So she hadn't seen him like that in a very long time, because there was always a touch of melancholy to everything that he did or said. Even when he was happy, there was a touch of he's faking it. But this seemed to be genuine. And she says to her father, "What happened?" And she was kidding with him. Maybe they didn't do surgery on your heart. Maybe they touched something else which awakened by you. And he said, until today, she doesn't know whether it was serious or not, or in jest. He said, after I saw the suffering and lived through the suffering, I questioned myself, why am I alive? How can I live and experience after seeing what I saw? And I came to the conclusion, I am alive, but I just don't have a heart. So I thought I actually was impaired. I was handicapped. That during the Holocaust, my heart stopped working. No, of course, I know it's pumping blood, but it's not really a heart. But when I came and they told me that my heart is diseased and they'll be able to fix the heart, I then realized that what I was feeling in my mind actually, in a sense, had affected the physicality. But now that they fixed the heart physically, I'm allowing myself to feel as well. It's, in this case, the surgery opened them up. You make what you want of the story. It actually happened. I read it in she was writing about her father. What exactly does it make? I'm interpreting it this way. But the point of it is that having a broken heart allows you to feel again. So, in fact, every once in a while, either you meet or perhaps you have been privileged to feel this yourself. And of course, this is very private, so it's not something you tell people, but this is something that deep down you feel, where at a certain time, a certain period in your life, you basically turn to God and you felt worthless. You felt very badly about your behavior or about who you really are. And with absolute humility, you spoke to God, or you mentally or even verbally, and you said, "Give me a chance," or "I appeal to your mercy. Please help me. I don't deserve it. I have no reason that there's no logical reason for you to help me, whether it be financially or emotionally or spiritually or a mixture of all of them, but you're God, and I have no one else to turn to. When you're on that level of a completely broken heart, that is when you've destroyed the forces of evil. And that is when you make yourself into a vessel, into a container in which goodness and holiness could rest. Because you got rid of the schmutz. There's no more dirt in this vessel. It's not a dirty wall, and there's no sediment on the bottom. You're empty. You're broken. That's why in Yiddish, there's a beautiful expression, es ist nicht da as a, I think they use a Hebrew word, es ist nicht da as a shleimes dicke Sach wie a zerbrochener Herz. There's nothing more complete than a broken heart, which is, it's a cute statement. More complete, broken heart, they're opposites. No, the broken heart actually is a completion. So this is what the Rebbe says, Kichol korban min habehema, anytime there's an offering or a sacrifice from the animal, hu l'shem havaya. If we're talking about getting closer to God through feeling His presence, that would be to the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, hu midas harachmim, and that refers to the attribute of kindness or compassion. Aval l'shem Elokim, but if we have to deal with the name Elokim, and we already explained, Elokim is the difference between saying and blowing. Blowing is the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Saying is Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Mem. The Elokim refers to the way godliness is concealed. So if it's to connect to the Shem Elokim, He midas adin, then that we're talking about the attribute of judgment. Because in order for godliness to be revealed in nature, godliness has to be concealed in what we would call the laws of nature, which again, using it from a bird's eye view is arrogance. What do you mean the laws of nature? There are no laws of nature. Who's making those laws? The lawgiver is God. Who created nature? It's God. What do you mean the laws of nature? There's almost like an arrogance and giving a validity and a permanence to something which is not there. It's God being revealed in a certain form. God is revealing Himself through a certain form of behavior or conduct, and it's predictable in our eyes. I think all of us are reasonably sure that the sun will continue to rise from the east and continue to rest in the west, but we don't know that to be one absolute. It doesn't have to be like that. Laws of nature? What do you mean laws? Who's making those laws? So there's an arrogance to that concept because the laws of nature are not independent of God. What we call the laws of nature is a revelation of God. And then when God reveals another aspect of, or a deeper aspect or a more powerful aspect, we call that a miracle. It's the same God, the same sun, two different rays of it, one Elokim and one radiating Avaya. So when a person wants to get closer or connect to the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, he brings an offering, but this offering is with a gentleness. It's not breaking anything, it's being attracted to. But if a person has to work with the Shem Elokim, then when you bring an offering, it has to be by using judgment. And the judgment on yourself is to break that sitrachra. You only bring the korban kiyam leshaber, to break and to remove the spirit of impurity, v'sitrachra on the other side. This is what it means, a broken spirit. So how do you break the spirit of the Sitra Achra? And the answer is, you break the spirit of the Sitra Achra by the heart being humbled to the extent that it's crushed. So now the question is, how do you crush the heart? We're talking about it in a spiritual, emotional way, and that we'll talk a little bit about tomorrow. Okay, so we concluded halfway in the page, Tzadik Zayin. Okay, good day, everyone. And at noon, we'll be discussing another mitzvah and some thoughts